Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Being Whole podcast. Today, I am here with my friend, Jenn Fieldman, and Jenn is going to tell us all about how it's been to be a therapist in a pandemic. She's going to talk to us about boundaries, and she's just also going to give us some insight as far as what things look like for people maybe in the last few years and how that has changed. Right, Jenn? That's what you're here to do?
Absolutely. Here for all of it. Yes. Hi.
So, Jenn, I know that I kind of said in the intro, just you're a therapist, but that's such a broad term. So I'd love for you to give us a little bit of background in terms of what it is that you're actually doing now, kind of what brought you to that space. And let's just open up the conversation there.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, hi, I'm so happy to be here. So how did I even get here? I am from Illinois, grew up on a farm in the middle of central Illinois, and actually studied theater in undergrad. And that ultimately, after doing some theater in New Jersey and New York, I moved back to Illinois to work for my undergrad as an admission counselor. And that's how I really kind of got to know that I was more interested in getting to know the kids and their life than selling things like to the college. I'm really sorry to my undergrad. Great thing to study. But the kids there were like, or young adults there were like, Jenn, this is what you should be doing. And, really speaks to your soul when that happens. And my whole, I would say, theme of my life is that we are continuing to learn all the time. Even after this very conversation, you and I are going to learn a little bit more about ourselves, right? And we're going to be inspired to do something else or more or whatever. And that's what I just love about people and education and life, right? Is that we just are continuing to be inspired. So anyway, I worked in Chicago for a bit and then moved, and then I was a guidance counselor. That's how I started. So I was a high school guidance counselor at a private school in Chicago, and then at some schools here in Austin, all the while having a private practice after school hours. And I was just really noticing that the only reason I really enjoyed being a guidance counselor, again, was because I got to work with families and I got to really know the parents and, them as couples and the kids and their, development. It was far less about, did you get your chemistry, Yeah. Right. So I just, I went full time, full tilt boogie, as my director at one of my high schools would say, into private practice. I moved then to Asheville, North Carolina, where I was a wilderness therapist, and then my private practice exploded from there, which was fantastic, working with addiction and couples work. And, that's where I really got my first taste in working with other private practice therapists. And so getting inspired by them and noticing, wow, yeah, maybe I'm venturing into this kind of a journey, right? More into couples. So really touching into lots of different areas, as well as growing in my own life, right? As a person who has been in and out of relationship, has lots of friends all over, the world, really, which is so great. And just noticing my own changes and what I needed in order to support myself, right?
I love that. I love that so much. Just as you're just telling the story of how you really embody everything you said in your intro, that you want this lifelong learning experience. And that's really what you're doing, because you're continuing to learn, not only, as you said, about yourself, but about what is this career path that's going to fuel you and really put you in your purpose and keep you in that space. And it's so interesting to me too. Like, I honestly, when you said that you had theater background, I was like, that's probably actually really good training, because then you could manage your face when people are telling you stuff, right?
I never even thought about that before, to be honest. Yes, but
My face gets me in trouble a lot. I'm very non-verbally expressive, and sometimes I don't realize the faces I have. And I've joked that I like want Botox for that reason, so it's frozen. Okay, so as you're kind of figuring this all out for yourself and really understanding, who you like to work with in clients and kind of going through some things, I mean, that's really still part of your process too. That wasn't just something you did in your early career. You're still continually doing that, and that's why I love, even when I see anything you write on Instagram or Facebook, how you always sign it ever healing, because I think that that is such a beautiful statement too. It's ever healing, ever learning, and just this idea that there is possibilities for expansion and growth, not because we're terrible and we need to be better, but just because we get to open up these continually new spaces for ourselves. It's so beautiful to me.
That's it. That's exactly right. That's the whole thing. And you know, while I was in Asheville, I became a minister as well. So I went to school to become a minister, and so I can marry people. So I do premarital counseling, marry people, help people through their relationship, perhaps getting a divorce and helping them through that. So it's the whole cycle, right? Of just, you know, what it's like to just be on the planet and support people the whole time, because it's all okay. You know, we just have so much shame that's brought in about our journeys. Like, am I doing it right or wrong? And, you know, all along, it's just about what's the reflection that you have, and how can I support you in that, you know? Yeah.
Well, and that's, I mean, I think too, you're just so welcoming and open. I can see where people start to just feel very comfortable with you, you know, right off the bat. And so what was that like? Even, you know, you have this private practice, and I know then, you know, you moved from North Carolina, you were in Seattle, and then now you're back in Austin. So just even kind of building, you know, I'd love for you to tell people what that's like, you know, building this business and having that transition across different spaces, and now over Zoom, you know, what's that really been like for you as a business owner, and then also for your clients in that space?
Yeah. So, as I said, I had private practice just from the beginning. So from 2005 is when my private practice started, and then, you know, I was guidance counselor, and then I moved from Chicago to Austin, and then Austin to Asheville, North Carolina, and then to Seattle, Washington, and now back to Austin, Texas. So I was actually seeing people on Zoom before the pandemic, before people were doing Zoom therapy more, because when I decided to move to, so building my practice in Asheville was just so wonderful, and, you know, just so loving and wonderful, and really understanding what it's like to be a business owner, as well as just 100% being there to support my people and myself and my fellow therapists. And it's that relationship, right? So regardless of, now there's nothing, to me, being in the office with somebody is so special. It's an energetic exchange. If someone wants a hug, you know, if there's a hug that's offered, and it's such a beautiful way to begin or end a sesh, you know, if that's what the client is, you know, wanting, and it's so wonderful. And so there's nothing that replaces that for me. But because it's a beautiful relationship, even so, I kept those people from Asheville. I think I only lost 2 or 3 because they just didn't know what this thing called Zoom therapy was. You know, it was too scary or strange or whatever at the beginning. So I was seeing people, and my practice kind of stayed full, right? So from Asheville to Seattle, I could see people because I'm licensed in both. At the time, I was licensed in both North Carolina and Washington. And the dynamics really, as much as it's lovely to be in the office, again, nothing replaces it for me. There's something about just being with a person and holding space for them, regardless of where they are. This can be done over the telephone, you know, whatever, as long as you're actually listening and tuning in. And that's really what I hope to teach people anyway on my, you know, the posts that I put out there. It's you know, it's about being present for each other.
Yeah.
And this is how we're going to be ever healing, is to be ever present for each other. When someone's not listening.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of therapy is man, I just listen wholly, and I get to experience these journeys and these stories and trauma and healing. Wow, what a gift to my whole life. And so that can even even while we're doing this right
I
now, I
know. I
totally
love
feel
it.
and we're looking at each other over
I
Zoom, right?
know. I love it. And I just love your energy and spirit. And I think like, that's why you are the perfect person to talk about why this can be such a wonderful space, because you embody it so well. Just anyone who maybe is only listening and isn't watching this video on YouTube, if you go watch it, you'll just see how she just shows up. Jenn is just showing up for this conversation, digging in like I was sitting right next to her. And that is important, because I don't think, unfortunately, everybody has transitioned as well as you have into the online space. And so I really want to let people know that like, it is possible to keep finding somebody. I actually had one therapist on Zoom the very start of the pandemic, and I could tell they were like looking at other windows,
Yes.
because I'm on Zoom a lot.
Oh yeah.
So I knew what was up. I'm like, oh, I see you. I know what's happening.
Mhm.
And I was just like, okay, you know what? This isn't for me. Right. But then now, a few years later, or whatever it is, I actually have my favorite therapist I've ever had. And we've only ever met on Zoom. And we're actually even doing EMDR on Zoom, which,
Yes.
and so
I do. Yep. Mhm.
it's just so cool. And it's what you said. I feel seen by her. I feel held by her. Like there's no question in my mind that she is 100% right there in front of me. And I love that you say that that's what you encourage people to do, because I hope that is what the pandemic has shown people, is that you can be present for people, even if you can't be right next to them. It's so possible to, even through a text or what have you, to really show somebody like, I see you as a person. And I love that you just encourage that so much in relationships and as you're working with your clients and everything as well.
Yeah, and that's what, therapy is. It's that relationship. So while short-term therapy is also super cool, because there's lots of healing in any kind of therapy that you get. And there's something special about the continuation, somebody who really knows your story. And so that's a big reason why people in Asheville also wanted to stay with me while I was in Seattle. And now they want to stay with me while I'm in Austin, and my people from Seattle are with me while I'm here in Austin, is because it's that continued supportive, fully respectful relationship where you're both learning and being held. But EMDR, you mentioned, yeah, trauma therapy was something I really was worried about doing over Zoom, because that's where I really just want to be in the room with somebody to make sure that they're totally okay, but I have found that if I can pause it at a certain point, then we can kind of do more reflection. So it's actually kind of a neater, deeper dive into how is this going for you?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and what I've actually liked about it, and I noticed this last week, so I was like, I should write about this, was how then even when I was on Zoom, so like even reflected in my background, like I had, some flowers, or I had a candle, like I set my own space up so well. And then after the EMDR, like giving me self-space to integrate that, like I was already then in the comfort of my own home. So like it actually, for me, when I'm working on things, I'm actually finding it to be a wonderful space then where I can just have that already there. I don't have to then leave the office, worry who's seeing me if I've been crying, which is always, or whatever. I cry when I process, it's fine. And so just I've really enjoyed it. And if you would have asked me that a year ago, I would have been like, what, EMDR on Zoom? How's that going to work? And I would have really kind of had not a bad attitude about it, but more skepticism for sure than I do now. I'm just like, it's been the best thing for me, really, in terms of my own healing journey.
And for anybody listening, EMDR is a trauma therapy, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So it's something you can Google, but it's a wonderful way to work through some beliefs systems that you've carried through your life. So just so you know,
No, thank you. No, I'm thank you, because I do think too, like more and more people are looking into different types of therapies and modalities and just exploring all of the different paths that you can even go to for different types of therapists or counselors and things like that, which you yourself are continually exploring new paths, right? I mean, talk to us a little bit about the space that you're opening up for yourself as you are ever learning.
Yeah, ever learning, ever healing. Yeah, I just started a sex therapy program with the University of Michigan, and I met with my my supervisor yesterday, and I said to her, asked her, what is this thing called sex therapy? Like, why is it so different than what I'm doing? And she said, exactly. It's no different than what you're doing, but it just gives people the opening to talk to you more, knowing that you will be there to hold them, and their story, their either sexual trauma story or just sexual curiosity story, whatever it is that they're coming into right now, because you're using the word sex before therapy. And I said, yeah, I love that. I love that. And that's worth it to me because I'm here for all of it. So yeah, I'm super psyched to start this program and to really move into helping women and men, and all gender, all people on the planet, in regards to where are they at in their like 40s to 50 somethings, because boy, do we experience lots of changes right now, bodily, emotionally, sexually, all of it. So
Well, I think it's interesting that you said that it is so much about the word then in the title, right? Because then that all of a sudden opens up that space for people of like, oh, okay, I can talk to her about this. Not like they absolutely couldn't talk to you about that any other space, because they could, you already have done all of that, right? But it is like that area then where, there just are spaces where people, unless they have almost permission to go there, they kind of are hesitant sometimes to bring it up, or maybe they're worried about what perceptions could be there, or what have you. So I love that you're just continually expanding the ways that people can kind of connect with you through even your trainings and things like that, because I do think it reaches people differently, somehow, even though you're already doing so much of that, right?
Yeah, especially in my trauma work, I worked really directly with a sex therapist, someone who marketed themselves as a sex therapist in Seattle, and that person sent me just a whole bunch of trauma patients to work with in my office. So I've already been doing sex therapy, right? But it's good work to do. But I wanted to say something. You mentioned something earlier that really got me thinking about how important it is to have your space when you're on Zoom. And so I just wanted to say, you were mentioning candles or flowers, or perhaps you were sitting on a pillow or whatever you were doing, right? Having your Kleenex near you. And that's something I go through before every time I meet a new person, right? So let's make sure that you're in a confidential space, and if somebody else is in the house, make sure you have a sound machine, or maybe your iPhone, or phone can have a sound machine thing on it, so you can put that near the door or whatever, something where you can feel really safe in your own home. Make sure that perhaps you want some water near you, or some, your Kleenex or whatever, a real comfortable space. And I always say that to my clients over and over. I just want to make sure you are comfortable where you are, because I can't control the setting, right? I can do that in my office, but I can't do that for someone in their home. And so just over and over, I keep saying that. So anybody that's interested in Zoom counseling or coaching or anything of that nature, be sure that you really are thoughtful about your space too when you are.
Yeah, it sounds like a kind of a basic suggestion, right? Like, think about your space, but it really isn't. It's so big. And it's something where, especially because so often we are on our computers or on Zoom or what have you, you might just be plopped down here, or, oh, I'm in my office, or, oh, I'm just on the couch, or what have you. And I was surprised. I really did. Because you're looking kind of at your own background. So it wasn't only just feeling it like in the session, but it was the idea that I could see it. I was like, oh, okay, I'm right here, surrounded by my own things. I could even see it in my window. And then a few weeks ago on my podcast, I had someone else on who said that whenever she goes on to like share her story or talks about different things, that's what she does in her office, is make sure she has like her incense lit or her candle or what have you, because then that's like that comforting scent to her. And I think that we're good about doing that. And other times, a lot of times, people like know what soothes them or what comforts them. So instead, just creating that space from the beginning, so you feel held not only by the person who's on Zoom with you, but in your own space. And I think that's wonderful.
And what my clients don't get to see, like they see this background where I have my birds that I brought with me from Asheville. We talked about that earlier. And I also noticed I should probably paint my walls, but anyway, I just moved here. But I keep this wonderful picture of a donkey and the person on it backwards, writing it backwards. And it says, everything is unfolding perfectly, which, it is, even in our messiest, right? It's all going to come out. So I keep little sayings. I keep a picture of my grandparents, me as a little kid, and my sister here. And I just look at every day, little things that are just like calming to my soul that I'm looking at. Prayers, and also, of course, good scents that I spray all the time.
Well, and it's so interesting too. I was on a Zoom last week, and their kids, they sent in the chat, they're like, my son likes your unicorn, because I have this little unicorn.
Yes, oh, it's great.
So I think that that's even interesting too, is just like the ways that it's changed, our ability to kind of see different facets of people, or to see different elements of people. Because you said right away when we got on Zoom, I noticed your birds in the background and we talked about them. And so I think it is just a way to remind ourselves too that, bringing little elements of our own personal self into stressful situations or places where maybe we need that comfort. There are so many ways we can do that too, right? Like just, whatever that looks like for you, or even if you can't have something physical, is there a space you can go to in your mind or evoke something to just really bring you back to that sense of comfort and safety? That's so big. I think those coping mechanisms and learning what works for you.
Well, and even that, right? When we do anything like Zoom in this way, where we're able to have a portal into other people's lives, right? We get inspired by what other people have. Yeah. So it's, oh yeah, I should probably add more greenery in my life, right? I need more plants, or I love that color. That color is so soothing for me. I need that, So I love how actually the placement of your unicorn in front of your book being whole, which is great. You can kind of see wings. It looks like wings, blue wings coming off of your unicorn.
I love that, because I love that. Okay, that's great. I'm keeping that for then. Okay. So over the last few years, with things shifting and more people being on Zoom, and a lot of people in the mental health profession finding themselves needing some more space because of all of the overwhelm kind of that you've seen with more people needing services, have you noticed a shift in the things that people are bringing about or wanting to talk about, or the issues, or can you speak to any of that?
Yeah. Especially, and I'm currently in this moment talking about myself, 2.5 years ago, or that's when the pandemic.
I don't even know.
Girl, I don't even know.
I still don't know.
All in our homes. And people were coming to me, right? Or all the therapists in the land, with anxiety and fear. And I had my own, right, that I was working through. So I had to go the extra mile to get myself grounded, to be able to hold space, and also to be able to honestly say, yeah, it is scary, isn't it? Sure is.
Yeah.
Now let's think about different tools, right? So anxiety is it's really erupted. Probably anxiety for my practice, anxiety more than depression. To be honest, and just a great amount of fear. Also, relational issues, be it not just couples breaking up, because I mean, yes, couples have had some problems, But it's also been a lot of loneliness for people who are, single or uncoupled, and this sense of, you know, what's it going to look like in the future for me, and I don't like this, right? Or gosh, I like this whole bunch, and what does that say about me, right? So it's the whole spectrum of it. And so I've seen a lot of transitional, like relational things in my office, more than even before, because people have taken this time as some people have taken this time as reflection, right? To really get curious about themselves. Like, what it does this, after you binge all the Netflix shows, right?
Right.
Get through all of that. Maybe you've reread a book or two, maybe, you've cleaned all of your, everything in your house, right? After you've done all of that, now it's time to take a look at ourselves. So, yeah, probably the most is relational, like, who am I, and do I like this job that I'm in, and what do I do? Oh, that rings a bell, doesn't it?
Sounds familiar. Everything you're saying sounds familiar.
Congratulations, by the way, huge changes for you, and I'm so happy for you. That feels like you're really stepping into who you are fully, with your new path and coaching, and being here for other people in that way. And I just am delighted for you.
But it's exactly what you're saying. It's like I had always kind of done my work and thought about these things. It wasn't anything new, but it was kind of at a different level and a different layer. And maybe that's because there was a lot of uncertainty and fear and everything, so you focus, or for me, then I was like, okay, I'm going to go in on the thing that I know, which is myself. So I'm going to just keep there, and I'm going to keep solid there. And it really was a transformative period for me. And, just to really understand, okay, what do I want then going forward from this? Or where have I been maybe not stepping into things that I say I want because of fear or because of whatever else. And just, losing several friends for a variety of reasons, some due to the pandemic, some due to other things. I had a lot of loss in my life. And so really too, that understanding, like, life is so short. So I want to go and grow and do these other things. And I think a lot of people really felt that. And so it's that shifting everywhere, right? Not just in, you see those things, the great resignation. It's like, I think it should be called the great awakening instead. It's like
total agreement. And, you've done over the years, you've done that good self work, right? And we read about that in your book, Being Whole, but also like just really noticing like that. And so how beautiful for you. But so many of my newer clients had been like, Jenn, during this time, I thought to myself, maybe it's time to really work on that thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so I love that. I'm like, yes, let's go for it. Let's do this for you so that you can live big, live fully. Right. And that's ever healing. Like, let's go for it for you.
And I love that, it was such a difficult space for so many people, but I love that it did for a lot of people, because, it might've just been, their last thing, the one thing that they couldn't deal with anymore, that then pushed them kind of into this, okay, now I'm going to really change things or shift things for myself. And I understand where that can come from. You get to that breaking point where you're just like, okay, yep, then now I got to look at this thing. And that doesn't mean that's easy. That doesn't mean that just because you get to a point where you're ready to look at something, that then it's like, oh, okay, I was ready for it, so it went great. And so really even, watching people in my lives and in my life, and myself included, really watching people work on themselves. Like you said, really working and digging into some of those things and wanting to change, instead of just saying like, okay, I'm going to stop just complaining about this. And instead I'm going to look into this, even though it hurts or it causes me pain, or it might cause some hard decisions to be made. And I'm not sure that do you think that's going away, or do you think that this is just a space now that people are stepping into more?
I hope it's not. I hope it's not. I hope that this is a real awakening, to use your word, in the realm of, getting support and for our lives, right? As I have a therapist, I have, supervisors, I have friends, I have people who are supporting me in my life, right? Fellow therapists, and we need each other. Connection is where it's at. And so to use be with a therapist, even in what I like to say to my clients, as I was hearing you talking the hard stuff, there's some hard stuff, but therapists and coaches can also remind us that there's gentleness too in all of us. There's both things. And so to be able to find your soothing things, right? Healthy soothing things,
Mm-hmm.
as well as diving into the hard stuff. So like, do your 20 minutes of journaling for your deep dive, and then maybe do some reflection in the afternoon for your deep dive changing, but also, be sure you have your delicious tea and be sure that you go for that walk in nature and be with the trees and be, with your friends and, really loving yourself in the whole thing. Because this isn't for now, right? This is the rest of your life. You're learning how to deal with the hard things.
Yeah. Learning how to deal with the hard things at the same time, you're kind of unlearning some other things, right? Like, whoa.
For that. That's right. That's exactly right. While you're unlearning. And listen, I am currently working with a nutritionist myself, and I'm unlearning some things. And whoo, boy, I said to her the other day, I'm like, my poor clients, like I forgot, like as I've already made some changes, I'm kind of in my life, oh boy, I'm changing some patterns here, and it's fantastic, and it's also not easy. So gentleness.
Yeah. Well, and too, like I say that all the time. I'm like, oh, and the hard stuff, and it's hard. But the reality of it is, it was so much harder to be in the space where I was avoiding it or not looking at what was really problematic for me than it was to actually go in. Yes, going in is hard or it hurts, but it's like such a better space for me than it was, all the avoidance or all the shame or all whatever else I had, not actually looking at what I needed to look at for healing or for just different scenarios. And I think like too, what you're saying too about changing patterns and just, digging into things. A lot of times, like, we've have this self-awareness, but it's exactly what you're saying, having a coach or a therapist or somebody who can just help hold that space for you and help guide you and help also give you tools and recommendations and tricks and tips for you to make it gentler for yourself, because it doesn't have to be, and should not be this terrible space where you are constantly re-traumatized because you're trying to heal from something either.
That's right. And, I just to add to that, like, yes, there are self-help books out there, things you can read, what have you. There's the people in the thing of therapy, that world. We've done a whole bunch of studying on ways to help support, right? Lots and lots of techniques, and years of training to it's the same as when you go to a doctor, you wouldn't necessarily try to heal that thing on your own. It's good to get that support, and nobody knows when you have a bellyache, only you do, right? And so nobody really knows, the feelings that are going on inside of you unless you're really talking about it. But of course, you're not going to talk about it so much at work, because then, people start talking to you about talking about yourself too much at work. So, finding a person to really, do deep dives with is I just think it's so important.
I think so too. No, and that's honestly one of the, I've gotten a little less cranky at people about it, but that was one of the things I used to get really cranky at people about. I got so tired of like everybody telling me how much they loved Brene Brown. I love her too. So I didn't get tired of them telling me they loved her, but I got tired of them being like, well, I read Brene Brown's book. It's like, great. But then what did you do about it? Like, it's like this awareness, or they're like, oh, I've read this, I've read that, or I do this. And I'm like, I hear the words that you are saying, but I fail to see the actions you are taking that, and I did.
Well, exactly that. Like, clients will watch or listen or read, and then they bring it to therapy and we talk about it, we process it, and how can we make her words, other, lots of people's words, part of your journey if they're really resonating with you. Like,
Yeah.
how can I help you to adapt those? So that's absolutely what we talk about a lot.
Yeah. And not to say you can't glean. I'm not saying you can't read things and then get wonderful. I myself read things and move through a lot and journal and reflect, but it's more just the idea that reading something, or yes, thinking somebody's great or agreeing with what they have to say, that isn't what heals you. That brings you the awareness and maybe can point out some things or some areas for you. Like, I love that more people are digging into some of these things because of the work and because of all of these things that people are talking about more, all the different books on boundaries. These are wonderful sources for healing, as you're talking about. But for me too, like, I get a little like cagey when it's just all about like self-awareness, because it's like, is it though?
Other levels of awareness, right? Deeper parts, like when we have the awareness, then we need to do something with it. Yeah.
Okay, so I know that I've taken a lot of your time here, but I'm just so curious about if there are other things that you think that people should be aware of, or if there are things that you've noticed in the last few years, or just even about your own practice that you want to share with us today.
Right. I would say that, again, probably getting back to that word connection, ultimately taking a look at, how often am I connecting with myself, with spirit, with nature, with my spouse, with my kids, really taking a look at that, and then noticing, where could I use some help in doing that? Because so often when we get into our habits, right, we form our own patterns, and sometimes those patterns help us to disconnect. We might be super connected at work, but we're disconnected in so many other parts of our life. Really taking account of those things, because it is that connection that's going to keep you going. It's that connection to self, to spirit, to spouse, loved one, to children, to nature, that really, that's where the healing is, right?
I love that. I mean, obviously connection is huge for me. And I really appreciate how you also you didn't go right to other people. When you said connection, you said self, spirit, nature. And the reason I want to bring that up is even on something you touched on earlier, when you said that people who maybe were at home then, some of them liked that. And that's something where, I think there's sometimes shame or guilt for people when they do want to just kind of draw inward or be by themselves, or when they're maybe more introverted, or they feel like they don't need people as much. And it's like, really, connection is about the ways that you're deepening yourself, right? And you're deepening that connection to so many things. So maybe for you, it isn't that connection is you have 50 people that you're always talking to, right? Maybe it's only a few, but maybe there's other deeper connections in other ways, or maybe you have fewer connections than somebody else, but it might be that those are the ones that feed you, and that's how that looks to you. And somebody else might have a multitude of connections, but that's what feeds them. And so I like the idea of really people finding the different paths of connection for them, as opposed to feeling like it has to look like one specific thing.
For sure. And we spoke about the word awareness a few seconds ago. The connection to self, I'm human. I am human. And so I notice when I'm this word doom scrolling, I know when I'm getting into the pattern of looking through social media, which I'm not connecting to myself then, and I'm not even connecting with others. Even if I comment, it's not a connection, so to speak. I'm seeing what people are doing in their lives, but I'm not connecting. Yeah. And so really noticing, I'm also not taking time to connect with myself during that time. I might be egoically wondering if someone's, looking at my video that I post or whatever. But then I have to really take account for, well, what's going on there, Jenn, right? And then if I'm watching, old reruns of Grey's Anatomy, at night, I'm not connecting with myself. I'm not taking the time to get curious about what's more. I'm not reading, Brene, the Atlas of the Heart, or I'm not reading all the books that are right here, right?
I know. I feel like I need to let everyone know I have every book Brene Brown has ever written. I've watched all her specials. I love her. Okay. I want to be her best friend, but we're both like introverted. And I keep telling myself that's why it's not happening.
That's why you got to start playing pickleball. So yeah, so the idea, right, of connection to self, that's also, that's where it starts. And that's where the connection to others goes from. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting too. I've really thought a lot about this too, because, over the last few years, after I did so much of my deep healing work, I actually wanted to spend more time alone. And it's because prior to that, I liked being alone, but then I would have like racing thoughts or rumination, or I would be in a different space. And so a lot of times, when I'd be out and social and what have you, it was more of a distraction. So now I actually like being alone more. I'm like enjoying my company and my time. And so that connection to myself is on a different level than I've ever had before. And so I have to sometimes then be like, okay, yeah, no, Cassandra, you haven't spent time with anyone else in a while. You got to go do that too. But it's like, I'm just over here, like really loving myself and being awesome. So
I love that for you so much. Oh, how nice.
Good for once, Jen. It feels good. I'm just so at peace. I'm like, God, I'm having a good time. Oh, wait, I'm alone by myself. That's cool.
I could feel my inner sparkle, even like walking around my house. Yeah, for sure.
And then that has allowed me to just really have different connections with other people, because I too then am giving back to myself. And it's also helped me understand then now when I do feel depleted or more burnt out, really looking, oh, okay, yeah, you didn't have enough of that space for yourself. Now understanding even how that is so important, that connection for me and the nature and things. And so I love that you not only make that such a part for your clients, but like it's so evident in just being your friend and seeing what you do on, the outings that you do or the things that you do to go connect with yourself and to connect with nature and friends and spirit and everything you're saying. So I love that you are so embodied in that for your clients and for everyone else too.
Thank you for noticing that. And thank you. And I just love that you get it. You get it. And that's so great.
Well, I'm just so appreciative of your time. Thank you for being here with me today. I know we're going to keep having many wonderful conversations, but where can they find you and learn more about you?
Yeah. So even though we just talked about doom scrolling and social media, of course, you can find me on social media. I am Jenn Fieldman, licensed therapist, is my business page on Facebook. I also have a YouTube page, Jenn Fieldman, licensed therapist. I'm also on Instagram, Jenn Fieldman, and jennfieldman.com, Jenn, it has two N's, Jenn Fieldman.com is my website if you want to connect with me. I'm licensed in 3 states and I also do some coaching work. So I would be delighted to hear from anybody.
And with everything you have going on, I know you'll have continued expansion and you have some different services that are just going to be growing and everything too. So I'll link all of your info in the show notes so people can go ahead and connect with you. And thank you again, Jenn. It's just been such a wonderful conversation. And I am so appreciative that you're willing to just kind of give everybody some insight as to how we can keep learning and ever healing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's beautiful.
I know. Now I feel like I'm going to cry. Oh, it's such a good time. Okay. Thanks, Jenn. So good to see you. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. Here are my takeaways from today's episode. Number 1, it may take time to find a great fit in a therapist, but trial and error can lead to a very comforting and connected relationship with the right person. Number 2, having therapy meetings online can provide a bit of a learning curve to get used to, but it can be an amazing option so you're in a safe space while showing up very vulnerably. Number 3, the pandemic has been a great opportunity for us to take a step back and analyze how we feel in relationships or areas of our lives. With perspective, we can become more aware of what we want in our future and make decisions in order to create a life that we love. Number 4, through therapy, you really add so many tools to your tool belt to encourage lifelong healing. Finding your person to deep dive with is one of the best gifts you can give yourself in life and relationships. Number 5, connection doesn't mean that you have an overflow of acquaintances. It's about being aware of what you're connecting with and what the quality of your connection is. Thanks again for being here. I'm so excited that you're listening. If you have a moment, I'd love to hear your feedback and thoughts. Please go ahead and head over to the Apple Podcasts platform or anywhere you listen and leave a review. Thanks so much.